In the last section, we learned how to temporarily reconfigure a single terminal window to access our Docker server running inside the virtual machine. I want to remind you again, you have to rerun that command every single time that you open up a new terminal window. All right, so I'm going to very quickly paste this inside of here just to make sure it's really clear that I'm going to reconfigure my current terminal window right here. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about why we would want to do this at all. Why would we want to reach into the virtual machine and take a look at the Docker server and all the containers that are running inside there? Well, I put together a couple of reasons that I think you might want to do this. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, so I just want you to have an additional tool in your little toolkit for working with Kubernetes so that you can understand how to kind of get a better idea of how to play around with all this stuff. All right, so a couple of reasons that you might want to mess around with Docker inside of our node. The first reason is that you can use all the same debugging techniques that we had learned much earlier in this course to inspect containers and get logs from them and do all that kind of stuff when you connect to the copy of Docker running inside the node. So, for example, remember right here again, I just reconfigured my shell. So I'm going to do a Docker PS. And when I do so, I can scroll all the way back up to the top and get the ID of my multi-client container right here. So I'm going to copy that ID. Now I can get logs out of that container by doing a very classic Docker logs and then the ID of the container. Remember, this is something we covered way long ago at the very start of the course. Now in this case, our container has not emitted any logs, so I get nothing back here. But I could do other commands as well, such as, say, executing an arbitrary program or a secondary program inside the container. So for example, if I want to start up a shell inside of that container, I could do a docker exec it, then the container ID, and then I'll start up shell inside there. And so when I do that, I can very simply get a shell and I can start to poke around and get a better idea of the state of my container if I want to. Now, the one kind of caveat to this, the one thing I want to mention is that a lot of these different debugging commands are actually available through kubectl as well. So for example, I can still pull logs using kubectl from a very specific container. And I can start up a shell inside of a specific container using kubectl as well. As a very quick example of that, I'll do a kubectl get pods. I'm going to copy the name of my pod right here, and then I'll do a kubectl logs, and I'll paste the name of the pod. And again, I don't get anything back because the container has not emitted any logs, but it definitely would retrieve logs if any had been emitted. I can also do a kubectl exec it, and then the pod name, and then sh on the very end to start up a shell. And so the same thing right here, yeah, I'm starting up a shell using kubectl as well. So again, you can use all the knowledge that you have of Docker to do a lot of debugging. However, a lot of that stuff is already available with kubectl. So I'm going to kind of leave it up to you if you want to figure out how to do this stuff through kubectl, or if you want to just stick with your knowledge that you've already gained of Docker and use those same techniques as well. Now, the next reason that we might want to mess around with Docker inside of our node is so that we can do exactly what I did a little bit ago inside the course, where I manually deleted a container, and then we were able to observe that, oh, hey, it was restarted automatically. So essentially, you can test Kubernetes' ability to self-heal or restart crashed containers or whatever it might be by reaching into there and deleting a container manually. Now, that's not a great reason to do this, but I just want to say it's something that you could possibly do if you felt like it. Now, the other reason that you might do this is that if you're for some reason having a really tough time figuring out why images are being cached inside of your node, I'm talking about Docker images here, and if for some reason it feels like you're not able to update the image that a particular container is using, you can always reach into the container, access the copy of Docker inside there, and say, hey, delete your image cache, and just blow away all the cached images that you have. And so to do that, we could run the same command that we had learned way long ago. We can do a docker system prune-a, and this will remove all stop containers, all unused networks, and all build cache, and all images that are not being used at this point. And so I could just blow away everything inside there if for some reason I felt like there was a big caching issue with what was going on inside of my node. Okay, so that's it. That's a couple of reasons on why you would want to mess around with Docker in the node. Now, I just give these to you as like possibilities. Again, I'm rather convinced that you can think of some better reasons than what I've listed here of messing around with Docker inside the node. But again, I just wanted to give you a couple examples to kind of get your brain going and give you a reason to look into this feature a little bit more. All right, so let's take a pause right here and we'll continue in the next section.